They say that a sorcerer from a distant land once lived in Fukano a long time ago. Of course, most people don't believe that. However, travelers can tell that this place isn't a typical city. The ground beneath my feet is ebbing with spiritual power, proof of the ties between humans and those who are not. Fukano is a town shrouded in trees and surrounded by mountains bursting with energy of an otherworldly nature. I feel like this gets repeated at least 6 times throughout the whole plot, to the point that I start looking at it as like a meme how the color red is used in Commu. I finished this today and it's actually pretty decent when you consider that it was like $15 during the opening sale and you can do a lot worse. But that's basically what it is. There's nothing really that hasn't been done before, but still a fun ride for the most part. The Succubus route is kind of like some other ones that I've read, but actually weaker. I feel like it could have been longer or have some interesting turns with some of the extra cast, but there's not much. But I'll get to that later in the spoilers. The Sundari one works the trope like all the others, though it's also like the only one that actually continues the plot out of the 3 initial routes. And then there's Hanako. Honestly, I think this is the second title that I bought solely because there's a character design that I liked. And just seeing the banner, it's probably obvious which one Hanako is. Her route was also just there, but honestly that's fine. There's VN specifically just trying to sell you a character that I wouldn't mind more tomboys or snarky assholes with short hair. Honestly, I wouldn't even be mad if it was just Hanako for this price. Sure, you lose a decent overall plot, and I'd have an overall like lower rating of it, but I'd still be content on what I got. The fun thing is that the common route is the best thing going for it. Nothing is really original, but the chemistry between the supporting characters is at least fun. So for an example, one route has a small section with 2 iron pots trying to console each other and trying to find a compromise on their situation, and that became my favorite part of the route outside of like that 1 minute by the end for that route, right? These are random characters that only get introduced at the beginning of the route. The plot is that the main character is a sorcerer, but really his role is more akin to just peacekeeping. It's just that the only one up for the job are basically people that can see and hear spirits, and at that point you're probably going to be a sorcerer anyway. So the plot is generally just the guy trying to keep things in balance, keep things in peace, and not have everything blow up in the town. I think I said it before, but these are the best parts of the VN. It's nothing new, but it's enjoyable, and I'm much more of a fan of these sections than the romance sections. Sure, the romance has parts where it can shine, but overall it was just kind of bare bones. I think I breezed through the common route in like a day or maybe in a day and a half, and then I was hard stuck in a specific H scene for 3 days or so because I kept getting bored and I went back to Monster Hunter, or hell, sometimes I even went back to work because it's fucking boring me. Without the H scenes, I think I might have been able to finish this around like 15 hours, but I felt like I somehow finished in 20 to 25. So overall, 2 routes handle plot, 2 are just selling points, but the gist is that each route could have been branched more and had chances to do so, but they just didn't. Each route has 5 H scenes and it's actually way too much in some cases. Some of these are actually at like the length of 2 scenes, and that's even relative to this VN because some of them even feel like 3 times longer than a normal H scene in a different VN. I wouldn't say it's as bad as Primal Hearts because at least they gave plot more screen time than the other one. The more egregious ones are the 3rd one from Midari, which is the Succubus route, and Shiro, where they chucked all 5 scenes into her route and that actively hurt the flow of the plot. And that's kind of funny considering they only put 3 in Yuki's route as well, and it's like, okay, the other 2 are in the extras menu. Why couldn't you do that with Shiro? Who knows? Because in the end, Shiro's route would have flowed a lot better if it only had like 2 scenes in there. Overall, I liked Hanako. The part right before you hit a route is a good enough hook to keep you going to the end. The finale was decent. It's been done better, and I think a good part of it was just I was already fatigued from all the H scenes in that one route. There's parts where they info dump you, and it's possible to get some things confused, and during the section, considering they reveal everything in like 2 scenes, one in Yukina and one in Shiro's, right? Instead of going through a more natural pace, I'm giving it around a low 7, but I felt like it's closer to a 6. I think part of it is like the bias of like, oh well, like Hanako, so fuck it. But yeah, it has a lot of decent points in it, so it's like, I'll keep it in. The spoilers are mainly for small sections for a few routes, and the info dump that kind of confused me for a minute, and I had to go back into maybe like 2 conversations before, and it's like, oh yeah, I get it, I just misread it. So like Midari had a lot of comedic opportunity, but they didn't really go for it, and that's kind of fine. I've already seen it in other VNs, so it's like, oh, I would miss it, like that's fine, right? But the issue is that nothing was given in return, so you're just left with a net loss. Basically, she had this whole family that could have been incorporated into the epilogue, but nothing was ever done with it. The biggest point would have been the father, where I was assuming that might have been the first sorcerer, but that didn't end up being the case. There was nothing really wrong with Hanako's route. The only thing I might have liked is if they gave more sections around the guardian, and I think that bird's name was Rin. Either way, it's not really necessary, but that section in the common route was close to Hanako, and I just assumed like, oh, having 1 or 2 scenes inside a route would also make sense. It just would have been nice. They also could have incorporated the cops a little bit more, but that was like almost non-existent as well. There's nothing wrong with Yuki's route. It has the least amount of H scenes in the plot flow as well because of it. It info dumps you for her specific route and it foreshadows a few things that are needed to follow along the final route. I guess a weird thing is that there was a decent amount of talk in the comment route about getting her a wand. From what I can tell, you don't really need a wand, and they don't explain ASAP. That just makes it easier. The MC generally uses whatever branches he can find, which is like normally like 100-year-old trees. But he also just never used one in one specific scene. Like, yeah, I'll just use my own body. And it came to the point where it's like, does it just use more MP? Is it harder to control? Does it negatively affect your body? Like, what's the end goal after taking all these training wheels off? Like, what's the point of the wand? Sure, I think they just rode around it because all they really wanted to do was show off like the super tree that you couldn't have got the branch from. Well, it was like a root or whatever, right? Where the tree was wrapping around another tree and it was coexisting and basically just there to symbolize the relationship between Yukina and her friend, alongside mirroring the relationships with other few batch characters. So I guess the better outcome would have been to say like, oh, the branches are for upcoming sorcerers and the pro tag just didn't need any. It's like, oh yeah, once you're good enough, you don't need it anymore. The worst part was the passage of time, so it ends up being that there was actually 3 sorcerers, just saying reincarnating himself with the help of his little devil friend, Felis or Felis or whatever it's pronounced, just so he can finish his research to get Shiro back to the living without messing up her soul. And that was mainly due to him getting cancer in his previous life, but in the middle of Yukina's route, Felis mentions that she'll get his soul soon enough, or that his time is near and he knows it. So for a couple of minutes it sounded like he has cancer again, or that his reincarnated self has a limited amount of time compared to his normal self, which would be kind of fucked up for Hanako and Midori's routes, but that was not the case. And I guess the point was that Felix in the MC just knows that like getting the Otsuki or whatever it was called is basically the end of the line. The idea that Midori's dad being the first sorcerer is also dead because apparently the Protag soul ends up being the first sorcerers. This also leads to a few leading questions, like if the Guardian Hanako knows MC's circumstances, and it seems like no, but could connect the dots if they cared about it. One last thing, but isn't really important for the rest of the plot, but the families are kind of pieces of shit, and I assume it was just kind of written weirdly. So there's this character called Ko, and that basically takes care of the town's kids, like a daycare thing. She gets sick and gets sent to the hospital, and the kids are sad, but some dilemma happens, and the Protag has to go out, I think it's in the forest or whatever, but keeps Yukina there to take care of the kids. But the question is, where the fuck's the parents? It was already evening. There was also a few times where it was already night, and they're still there. I assume a decent amount of them were orphans or whatever, but they mentioned that that's not all of them. Really, it's just a plot device to keep Yukina away from the plot from developing. But I was like, where the fuck are the parents? So that's pretty much it. I think it was a fun ride. It was fun. Especially I just like Hanako the most than anything else. Like an asshole like half the time. Next one, I don't know. It might be the Clannad one that I had saved up for like a year. Right now I'm reading a few things and some of them are not going to be anything written for them. The other ones are going to be like 50 hours long. It's going to take a while. So the next one is either Kirikir or Clannad, and they're not really reviews. They're like recollection things. I don't know, it's hard to explain. I do have a couple other ones that are saved up. Honestly, I think I have like 5 saved up already. Overall, it's like I don't even know which one's going to go on my first at this point. But yeah, that's pretty much it.